Welcome to this is the October version of Read More Plays Club, but we're just late by one day, so we'll call it October. It's really November. For those of you who've not been here before, the Read More Plays Club focuses on recognizing select Concord Theatricals plays as important works of literature. This is a special one because we have one of my favorite playwrights. So first, I'm Amy Rose Marsh. I'm the Vice President of Acquisitions and Artistic Development for Concord Theatricals. And I'm honored to be joined in conversation today by one of America's leading contemporary dramatists, Will Eno. And we are going to be talking about his play, Gnit, which is currently running at Theater for a New Audience, or Tafana, as we say in New York. We're going to drop a few things in the chat and talk a little bit before we introduce Will. But the first thing is that we wanted to link to Will's play on the Concord site. So if you didn't get a chance to read it, you can read a bit about it and check out the play. But a cool surprise, we also have a discount code from Tafana. So if you were in New York and you want to go to the production, please use it to buy tickets. I think it's in, we'll ask Will, but I think it's in its first few previews. So you have a lot of time to catch the show. And if you're not in New York, feel free to call your local theater and ask them why they are not doing the play. So I'm sure they'll love that. But before I introduce Will, I just want to do a few reminders about how Read More Plays Club works. The format of this conversation, so I'll be talking to Will for 30 minutes and we'll just be having a casual conversation about the play. And then after that, we're going to open it up for questions from our readers and everyone in the room. So feel free at any time during our chat or now to express enthusiasm, thoughts, ideas, and questions in the chat box. So I see that some of you are already doing that. Thank you. Also, you're welcome to ask Will anything Gnit related in our Q&A box too. There should be a question box below me. So please, fill anything you want, fill that up. We're not in a live space yet. Hopefully one day we'll do a live recording, but we encourage you to really take advantage of these spaces in order to make the discussion fun and eventful. Please though, just a reminder, I think we all know by now, Zoom rooms work best when we keep them respectful and kind. So if you wouldn't say it to your mother, don't say it in the chat box. Also, this wouldn't be a proper book club without me encouraging everyone to join the Read More Plays Club mailing list if you've not already. So if you are a vivacious play reader and you want to hear more intimate, in-depth conversations with writers, please join. We try to do this every month or at least every other month. And we have some very exciting announcements coming up. So you don't want to miss those. Okay, so I think that's all the housekeeping. I'm going to stop talking and now, well, I'm going to keep talking, but I'm going to switch subjects. I'm going to introduce one of my favorite writers from the Samuel French catalog, Will Eno. So Will is an award-winning playwright and Pulitzer Prize finalist. He recently completed the Residency 5 Fellowship at the Signature Theater, which premiered his play Title Indeed in 2012. The Open House in 2014, and Wakey Wakey in 2017. Tom Paine, Based on Nothing, was performed in a sold-out revival at the Signature Theater in the fall of 2018, and it was a finalist for the 2005 Pulitzer Prize. It's been translated into more than a dozen languages. Will's play, The Underlying Chris, premiered at Second Stage Theater in October 2019, and the plot premiered at Yale Repertory Theater in November 2019. The Realistic Joneses appeared on Broadway in 2014, where it won a Drama Desk Award, was named USA Today's Best Play on Broadway, topped The Guardian's 2014 list of Best American Plays, and was included in the New York Times Best Theater of 2014. The play was recently included in 25 significant plays of the past 25 years in the New York Times. The French premiere, Juste les Jones, will be directed for the Paris stage by documentary filmmaker Frederick Weissman. I hope I pronounced that right, so you can make fun of me in the chat if I butchered it. Finally, in the spring of 2019, Will wrote the book for the hugely successful ad campaign, Skittles Commercial, the Broadway musical, which starred Michael C. Hall. Please join me in welcoming Will Eno. Will, Here you go. Oh, there you
Yeah. Hey,
Nice to see you.
hey.
I have to end with that Skittles tidbit because I feel like that might be on Jeopardy one day, and then someone in our audience will get the daily double, win it
Yeah.
all.
Yep. I just my daughter Albertine, she doesn't like Skittles, but she got some trick or treating, and she just gave me her little the candies that she doesn't like, and I got a super sour bag of Skittles that I'm excited to try.
Yeah, I'm surprised she doesn't. I mean, that has to be crazy for her. She'll always be like, this candy was a Broadway musical that my father.
She got to see that show too, which was really truly as bizarre and purely commercial as it sounds. It was one of the most joyful. It was a really beautiful and pure experience, and it was just really, really lovely to do this thing, which really truly they kept their words. Skittles and the Mars company, I believe, they'd never have shown any of it. They've shown little bits promotionally, but it just happened once, and everyone who was there got to see it, and that was their Super Bowl campaign.
It's amazing. I feel like it is a big challenge to segue from Skittles to Ibsen. Although if we have questions about Skittles, we'd probably take those too. But yeah, so we are talking about your play Gnit, which is adaptation. Adaptation, or do you like that word of Peer Gynt?
I do. I have said fairly rough translation. I've said I don't. I remember Edward Albee always saying that you should just say new translation, because that sort of describes it, and it is. They're all not in the original language, even if you're trying to do it, word for word. But so yeah, version, translation, all those things work.
Yeah. So this was, one of our odd pandemic plays that the Tafana production was supposed to happen right before the epic shutdown of March 2019. I feel like it's probably on, people were like, I was there when it closed, but it's been correct me if I'm wrong, it's been kind of in this purgatory, right, until right now.
Yeah, I'm sure there's another word to describe it, but yeah, it really is kind of a beautiful thing. It's just this incredible set by Kimie Nishikawa that's just been sitting there with a ghost light in the middle. It's this beautiful kind of rocky, grassy set. And it's been there for 19 months, just quietly sitting there. I think some real moss has grown on the fake moss. And it's an incredibly moving thing to be back. And we have three of the same people we did 4 performances in March 2020. And we have now done two preview performances. I had a very dark laugh with Oliver Butler the other day. We were thinking about, what if we got shut down again after 4? What if a new variant that doesn't have a Greek name sprung up? And but it's just all around. It's an incredibly moving thing, and I was really moved those 4 performances in March, because we had no idea what was coming, but it was just all very, very, very strange and incredibly. It was always human, because my daughter's school had stopped, and we thought that was just for a week or so. But so she was coming to preview performances, and there's an intermission, and as she loved talking with people as we were heading back to our seats, and she described the second act as horrid, was a word she had just learned, and so she was just saying it's horrid. She talked about a couple parts that she liked, and I think she was mainly referring to some special effects and some gore, but I think she's now gotten a little bit more gothic. So I think maybe she might. Anyway, it's an amazing Jeffrey Horowitz and Theater for a New Audience. I'm incredibly grateful and kind of overwhelmed with their constancy and their commitment to just, because I have probably had 30 phone calls, all these different crazy places we were staying throughout the pandemic, of talking to Jeffrey and him saying, well, we really want to reopen with this play and we want to do it. And it's just really, really amazing. And Oliver Butler has done we did a very, very short rehearsal process, and the new folks have just jumped right in and hit the ground running. And everything kind of makes me want to cry about it.
Oh yeah.
Just, and
Yeah.
I hope we're all moving. Maybe I don't know where we're moving as a country, but just I know some people look at things and they are a little more thoughtful about how much work went into every kind of little thing, and you know how. I mean, just going to the grocery store and certainly going to the hospital, and if you have a broken arm, and or you know, or if you have COVID, or if you've had a stroke or anything, it's just amazing. It's amazing what we all do. It's more amazing what we all do for each other than it is horrifying what we don't do for each other, I guess.
Yeah, it is really true. It's funny, like, you know, having my own experience with just, you know, not seeing any theater as someone who goes so much. I didn't realize how emotional I was until like the first couple of performances. And even now that hasn't gone away, I think, you know, pieces of art that I really love, just being in the audience, like, and it sneaks up on you. You think you're totally fine. And then all of a sudden you're clapping and then you're like, oh my gosh, my face is wet.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, such a beautiful experience. I mean, so did you find that like, you know, having this weird, you know, 18-month, 19-month break, did your approach to the material change when you came back to it after taking time away, or did you start to see the play?
A little bit. Yeah, yes and no. There's incredible sound work and orchestration in the play, and we all got together just to listen to the sound cues, and we were all kind of amazed at how the sound that begins. There's a first sound cue that begins the play, and it's kind of exactly what you would want if you said, okay, people have been through 19 months of sorrow and confusion and woe and mystery, and we need something to kick this off that sort of acknowledges all that and accommodates all that, but also kind of charges ahead. And so there's a bunch of stuff that is beautifully still apt and very seems to be applicable, and then there was some fussing around with things that I did, and I'm sure everybody did, you know, yeah. just trying to I hope there's a real humility to the thing, but also a something else that isn't quite humility, so like a daring. I hope there's a daring to what we're doing, and also a kind of humility to it.
Well, I think it's funny, like the epic nature of it, like it certainly reads like having gone through a pandemic and political strife and social justice. And there's something about like Peter's journey and the character's journey that feels so much more close in some ways, because I feel like we've had like an epic time these past.
It is amazing. It really is. It's
yeah.
amazing. And you know, I mean, and for a lot of stuff, you know, as epic is a good word, and for a lot of stuff, all we did was just finally start a conversation on a lot of these things, you know, and
yeah.
But yeah, I hope, yeah, there's 6 actors in the play. There's a bunch of characters, although not as many characters as in Ibsen's Peer Gynt, which I think is
well
25 to 40 or something. But
yeah, it's a good segue. I did want to ask you about just like because I don't know, I mean, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but I feel like you have to be just mildly crazy to adapt Peer Gynt. I mean, Peer Gynt's a little bit crazy, right? Like it's 40.
I think so. No, I don't take that the wrong way. You either have to be a little bit crazy or just slightly ignorant works too, I think, to kind of, because it was not something anybody asked me to do. It was long time ago. I had some friends who were just kind of messing around with it, and I just kind of listened in on some work they were doing. And but yeah, it's sort of like buying a really old farmhouse, but that's on fire and also has 5 other weird things going on with it, and it's sinking into the ocean or something like that, and think, oh, I should fix that up. And anyway,
yeah, but it is something where, you know, just the process, like it seems like, you know, when you say, okay, you know, we have this Norwegian play with 40 scenes, 40 characters, trolls, supernatural things, a Spanx that talks, like, you know, it's like, I think most people would be quite intimidated by that. And like, how did you, so when you were approaching it, just like, I guess my question is, it's such a simple question, but like, how did you begin to like think about ways to adapt the material? Or was it through Peter, or was it through kind of the, yeah, where?
It was a little, excuse me, I have I'm getting over a non-COVID cough, which is coughing is such a scary thing to do in public. And I can count the 7 coughs I have heard around in the world in the last year and a half. I think I started I started a little bit in some frustration with the play that here was this thing that everyone seemed to agree does not quite work on the stage, but it is done annually, it is done everywhere, and it doesn't go away. And so I was interested in the mechanics and the dramaturgy and just trying to figure out how can you make this thing really, really work. And I think early on, it's something I remain a little bit pleased with myself about, the beginning of the one section. A bartender says to Peter, who is my peer Gnit, how you doing, buddy? What's new? And Peter says all of the events of act 4 of the real Peer Gynt. He says, well, I did this, I went there, and this happened, that happened, that was hard, and then my mom died, and so, I don't know if Ibsen purists would be pleased by that or infuriated, but it is, all that stuff is there. And anyway, so yeah, I was trying to figure out how it might work on the stage. Was the beginning.
Yeah, and it had its production at Humana early on. Did it change? Is the play that it is now a much different play than it was?
It really is a much different play, and I know. So one thing one thing I always cared about. There are 2 things I really love from the original in all the different versions I read, and one is a moment where Peer Gynt is his mother is dying, and he tells a story to kind of ease her along into the next realm, and I find that pretty moving in all the different versions and translations I read. And then another thing that I was very, very much not moved by was the character of Solveig, and how both that character and that actress who plays that character kind of disappears for 30 years and 2 acts to just then appear at the end to forgive Peer Gynt. So I did have a little bit of a mission or an agenda to kind of redress that, or seek to redress that, or it also just seemed there's many more interesting things that could happen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is you're right. In the original, she's just gone. She just 30 years of who knows what she was doing. I forgive you.
You were always alive. And in that play, I've said this before, but it is very curiously, it's kind of pointedly pre-Freudian in some ways, and it's kind of, if you could call something post-Christian, and plenty of Christians would say that's not a term really, but it's also it lives somewhere in that funny area, and I think Ibsen really wanted to nudge it back toward the Christian notions of forgiveness and redemption and grace, and all of which are great things, but they don't have to happen in a Christian context, I think.
Yeah, sure. I want to talk a little bit about Peter, and I know we talked briefly about him before we started this discussion earlier today, because I'm fascinated by Peter. Personally, I think probably like a lot of people, it's hard to decide as an audience member sometimes if you should be rooting for him, or if you should dislike him, or if he's a hero, or if he is a villain, or if even that's the point. Like maybe the point isn't to have any feeling about him at all, but just to watch him But I'm curious, like, if you have as the author kind of like, should there be a way that the audience feels about Peter? Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I know so as I was saying, I started this as a kind of it was sort of mechanics and nuts and bolts and how to make this thing that did not seem to, this machine that did not seem to work, how to make this machine work. And I very much, and I've been working on this thing. It was around 2006 or 7 that I started some version of it. And like it or not, I have been working on it for a really, really long time. But one thing I realized was that my, whatever the thing you were talking about, that sort of crazy, an odd impulse to do this thing, it probably had more to do with my own some recognition in that character that, I my 20s and maybe my 30s and maybe a little patch of my 40s, you could characterize as I was on some, I hope not totally grandiose, but maybe totally grandiose search for myself and what am I doing here and what is my purpose, and to the detriment of a lot of wonderful people. I think I turned away from real people and real things in my life. My daughter, who's just 7, she just said the other day, we were talking about math and reading, and she says, well, that my teacher doesn't know that I wasn't put here on earth to do math and reading. So
Wow.
It's profound. She's having a little bit of trouble at school because the teacher does not know that fact about her. But so not to segue from that this character, I saw myself, or a bad version of myself in the character, into then saying, I think everyone should root for this person and like this person. But I hope if there's a way to feel that Peter is a version of Peer Gynt and has been stuck being some version of Peer Gynt. He was in the Bergman version, he was in the Peter Stein version, I was this. I've been doing this for 140 years and I still can't get it right. And I'm, to me, that and Joe Cornute does a beautiful job of kind of inhabiting that full, that something that I think you could, you can get a kind of feeling that this is a person who has been stuck inside this play in a million different versions, a million different nights, and it just keeps going that way and that way and that way. So
Joe is just for clarity, he's the actor who's playing Peter in Fauna.
Correct. Yeah.
So, and also an amazing kind of theater creator in his own right too.
Absolutely, I think he's a division. He played baseball, and I can't remember. I think it was division.
It's crazy.
What's good? I mean, it's Division III college baseball, but just a really, really great person to sit around and throw a ball back and forth as we are all thinking about things. And because he's a writer, he's used to just trying things. And I just sent this afternoon new lines that will be going into the show tomorrow. So he's absolutely a gentleman. And I was saying to you earlier, he does an amazing job playing this character. I think he might not be perfectly suited because he's a very dear, very thoughtful, very direct, kind, honest, wonderful kind of person. And he's playing this someone who's not, maybe not always
very well.
Yeah.
So he remembers to call his mom.
Yeah. That's one thing that's changed. I hope the love between the Peter and his mother. My mom died in about a year ago. Tonight, and she was 91, and it was I just, that we don't need to steer everything in that direction. It was one of the most complete and beautiful experiences I could ever. It was one of the luckiest things. We all got home to be right in the middle of COVID stuff and worries about traveling. And it was, my mom had had dementia for a number of years, and she didn't lift, but she found this unbelievably pure, clear place to be for the last 8 days of her life. And it kind of changed everything I felt about our story as a family, and just a really, really beautiful, magical thing. And so anyway, it's been great to work with Joe and Deborah Headwall, who's amazing in the play, on that the mother-child stuff, and how different ways that can go funny. And anyway, it's
yeah, but also it's something, I wonder sometimes with Peter, like my own struggles with him, it's like maybe he's such a difficult character because I do think so many people have his tendencies inside them, the kind of search for self and the ability. I mean, so it's not almost like, even if his relationship with his mom, I think because I revisited the play over the weekend in anticipation of this conversation with you, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to go call my mother. I think after reading, just because I was like, am I like this character? So I think there's something about Peter that just like, maybe as much as we like to deny it, his tendencies are kind of in all of us, for sure.
I think that's true. And one also a thing this was more conscious. Before I forget, Jim, who just wrote in, whose mother is 92 and has dementia. Wow. If this is interesting, Jim, I kept wishing I had got my mom a coloring book somewhere in the last couple of years, because I was just thinking that there were so many things that I would think to bring or to give her, and they were not quite. They would be sort of like books were not that. She loved to read books, but not anymore. And I don't know. I just had that thought, and I thought a coloring book is such a cool thing to do, and you can really do it. And certainly in that last 8 days of my mom's life, it was all stuff from when she was a kid that was coming back. And she kept singing this song really from 1940, something she would sing. I'm a villain, a dirty, rotten villain. I put poison in my mother's shredded wheat, which I think you might have in the Concord catalog. I think it's from
probably.
But anyway, yes, and Jim is saying music too. Music is all. We sang some Cat Stevens songs and some Neil Diamond songs, and
yeah, that's really beautiful. Yeah, it's funny. Like, it's just funny what the brain like chooses to, and hang on to. I want to talk a little bit.
Can I say one thing?
Sure. Yeah.
Just because when you were saying about wondering if you're like this person or that person or unlike that person, and a thing that I was thinking about in the, if I was writing this for 15 years, in the latter 5 years, the last 5 years, I was kind of consciously thinking about how we have Western civilization has a little bit been on this run where, you do a lot of self stuff, you do there's self-help is the thing, and it's a section and all that stuff. And I think that's great. And I think therapy is an amazing, hugely profound experience, and can be, and all that sort of stuff. And there is just the simple truth that, if, you can go outward too, you can reach outward and sort of find those things that you keep rummaging around for in yourself. You can find those feelings in the world and with other people and all that stuff. So that was something that is, I hope, in the play as a conversation starter.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about, because I did want to ask you, is there, like, of all the characters in this piece, is there like a wisest character? Like, I'm thinking about the end of the play where Solveig has some amazing line about how she learned to find like wisdom or beauty in stillness, staying still, and the birds, and
right.
but there is something, about like Peter, kind of the arc of his like epic journey, going to all these places, having all these experiences, and then her kind of like staying close to home and just listening to birds. And I guess like is one path more wise. I don't think wisdom is quite the word I want, but you know what I mean? Is one
Yeah,
more.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's just, it also, it really also could be that if you're going to get there, you get there anyways, and you get
Yeah.
there via Paris, Brussels, Vladivostok, or Rutland, Vermont, to pick a place, or Seattle, Washington, or wherever. That line is probably, it's something like, she learned the genius of staying in one place.
That's the line, yeah.
And it, I've been messing around and thinking a lot about Thoreau, and that seems sort of that seems to be his big push is, you can find the whole universe, and even that seems to be arguably true from a scientific point of view. You can pick anything you want to examine, and you will find laws of the universe in it,
Yeah. I'm wondering too, I was thinking about, I think the synopsis of the play on the Concord Samuel French website, there's a line in it about laziness is the opposite of love. And I'm wondering, does that something that still hold true to you? Has that changed since you?
No, I think that's really true. And that's not from me. That's I forget who said that, but I think it's maybe somebody named Ernst. You might, it's a famous person, maybe named Ernst, but I do think that's probably true. I don't know if it's the complete and pure opposite, and that's the end of the story, but I do think laziness certainly is not, it's hard to love lazily, I suppose,
Yeah, well, it definitely seems like a different kind of, like, maybe that's more indulgence and less love, or
right. Yeah.
Word for it.
Right.
I'm conscious that we're over, so I think we can start getting some questions going. Let me just make sure. Oh, no, there's already 3. Yeah, sometimes I take up all the space. I want to make sure. So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to ask you. Oh, cool. Okay. So this is a anonymous person. So I first heard of Gnit after I discovered it on 3 Views, which is that new theater review site that's been going on. How did you get involved with 3 Views? Did they reach out to you, and how was it working with them?
It was, I think, just those guys reached out, and I think they were doing as a very kind thing to plays that had been kind of shut down in the middle of things. And so it was kind of, I can't remember, it was right in the thick of things early on, April, May of 2020, I think. But they very kindly said, is there a scene that you want to send along or something like that? And
great. Yeah, they did some great work, I feel like, around like trying to give a voice to things that had been shuttered. So if people listening, if you haven't checked that out, I definitely encourage you to go look. I think it's a great way to pump yourself up for Tofana if you're able to see it, and if you're not able to see it, then you can call your theater. And
people can do what people are able to do. But just to make a real kind of plug for it, it is a really, it feels like one of those things of just 5 different crazy things coming together at the same time. And Oliver Butler did a beautiful job, and all the scenic work and all the design work and the acting is just really special and true. And I would love it if people could come, and I'm glad there's a little dealy thing, and I hope
yeah, I know it'll be my first time seeing it, so I haven't, full disclosure, I'm going, I think, the 9th, and so I've just been a reader of this play.
Oh, great. Oh, right.
And yeah, the 9th, that'll all change. So here is a question, and I kind of have a follow-up to this question. So someone asked about the translations that you worked with when you wrote the version of Gnit, or how did you, I guess, yeah, in terms of approaching material, were there certain versions of the play that kind of stuck out to you? Did you look at any of the kind of adjacent. I know you mentioned the movie there. There's like a
Yeah,
opera, I believe, or
yeah, and Romulus Linney has a version somewhere,
wow.
um, which I like. It's his is set in Appalachia, and it's pretty straight up. But also he was such a wonderful person, and we met once at some playwriting thing, and we talked about shoes and dogs right away, and then we never I'd see him around quite a bit, and we never moved from that top. It was shoes and dogs was
Like,
the,
how's your shoes? How's your
yeah,
dog?
yeah, kind of, yeah. um, but is it Archer? I looked at a bunch of the kind of the old British type of translations, and to be totally honest, I suppose it was good in a way because I just read a bunch of different ones and they all sort of ghosted around in my head a bit.
Do you have a so this is my follow-up question to this, is that there are parts of the play that do deviate from the Ibsen, and then as there, like for example, your trolls become real estate agents or realtors in green jackets. How do you decide, like at what points are you like, okay, this is where I'm going to start to, pull it this way, or the ending's a little different too. Am I correct on that? Or
The ending is really, really different. Yeah,
yeah.
the ending, I hope is I think it's better, but
I think it's more hopeful. Sorry, Ibsen. Somewhere Ibsen's gonna call us tomorrow. Just
again, it was all the normal things, I guess. A desire, what do you want to do, and fear, what are you afraid of? So, and also it's been so many years, I couldn't tell you exactly, but it was some a little bit of bouncing back and forth between formal stage considerations and how might those shape the the nature of the narrative, stuff like that. And those realtors are also sort of troll. They're slightly they're not quite human. No offense to realtors, because we all like living in buildings.
That's true. I think that's true. There's some people
Most of us like living in,
yeah. It was interesting because I started to think about my own real estate experience, and I was like, I couldn't see the comparison to trolls. And another question. So this is kind of a fun one. The promotional copy for Gnit says that Peter is famous for all the wrong reasons. What are the right reasons for Peer Gynt to be famous, or Peter Gnit?
That is a good question. Geez.
Big question.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Well, for this one, I would hope if Peter Gnit got famous via being a character in this play, it would be for finally it would be for, in the later moments of the play, his recognition of the audience. I think I don't know, and there's so much in Peer Gynt that's direct address, so you could say he's acknowledging the audience all the way through, but acknowledging is a lot different than seeing, I suppose. And but that's a really good question, and it'd be a good one you could really gotcha some Ibsen scholars, I think, if you'd say, what, why?
Well, and then this person also asked, what are the elements that to you were essential to his character?
These are all, they're sort of things that I might have projected or might have tried to see despite what was really there, but there is something pleasingly, recognizably sort of in the American tradition of optimism in Peer Gynt, and in that sort of expansion and heading west and all that sort of stuff. That the sort of road trip kind of ethos. And I go back and forth with the things I admire about the play, because it is unstageably ambitious, some
Yeah.
people might say, and that in itself is sort of admirable, I think. The thing that I find less admirable is that it was written as a quote dramatic poem first, and it sort of hung around in that form for I think 7 or 8 years. And I just picture that conversation in the bar with people saying, Henrik, what would be crazy is and that suddenly it's on, suddenly generations of people are stuck having to see Peer Gynt in theaters. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so another question. The play is so funny and so heartbreaking at the same time. How do you toe that line as a playwright? Yeah.
I don't know. I just think the world is that way, and I just remember my mom. She did not really. She maybe truly, no exaggeration, she might have had a thimble full of water in the last 8 days of her life, and that was it for anything in terms of sustenance. And so she just was lying in her own bed, which was a beautiful thing for her to be there. But I remember a really buzzy housefly started flying around in the room, and I was trying to swat it somehow off of my mom's still living, she was there. I was trying to swat this fly delicately. And my dad is also dead. And my sister was saying, I think it's dad. I think it's dad, which my dad was, he was a lot different from a annoyingly buzzing housefly, but there was something similar in the way this fly was going around. But that made it much harder, more complicated to try to kill this this housefly. But anyway, there's stuff like that. The very, very, very somber, like undeniably beautiful, delicate things in life. There also seems to be this just bumbling comic elements right there. And anyway, and I hope to try to answer that question. It might seem like a lot of self-flattery, but it seems like if you're trying to just get to something true, that you can go very quickly back and forth between funny things and sad things. If you're not really aiming for either, if you're just trying to get to something.
Yeah. I also feel like sometimes your plays, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but there are moments where, like you don't know whether to cry or laugh as an audience member, but it kind of doesn't matter. Like you present a lot of situations without judgment. They're just like kind of are what they are. And if you laugh, that's fine. If you cry, that's fine. And that's kind of a really beautiful, just my kind of having seen because I've had moments where I'm like in stitches and the person next to me looks so annoyed by that. And I'm like, oh, sorry. It's just like, I thought, and then, vice versa. They're laughing at something the next hour. Right. I'm like, that's really offensive. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. It'd be an interesting self-test. You could probably tell something about yourself.
Yeah.
For you, Amy, to think what is worse for me, to be the one laughing and someone else is crying, or when I'm crying and someone else is like what hurts and feels the wrongest for me?
Yeah. What is the often I feel like I'm the one laughing a little bit. Maybe I should be crying more, but it's fine. I'll digest that after our talk. That's what I'll think about later tonight. Oh, interesting. Okay, I actually wanted to ask you about this character. Someone kind of beat me to it, so good for you. The character of the town. The town is like kind of a big role, and it's a whole town, and it's one person playing an entire town. So the question is, what was your inspiration for the character of the town? And then how was that process trying to reconcile, maybe 20 Ibsen characters into a singular person?
It can't have been this simple, but it sort of seems this simple, that I was thinking, well, just both for the sake of economy, and I mean that both the money of paying for 20 actors versus paying for one, but also just the economy and the kind of elegance that can come from economy. I think just in a stroke had that idea, what if it's just one person and he just, and I love the way David Shee performs that is, and Matt Mayer did it, and Danny Wohan did it long ago. It's been really fun to work on that thing. It's not like broad characterizations of, oh, now I'm this, oh, now I'm that. It just is, it's kind of almost like the transcript of a town at a town meeting, kind of, where you just, I think we need a stop sign. We don't need a stop sign. Well, someone's going to get hit by a car. No one's going to get hit by a car. Just put a crossing guard there. We can't afford a crossing guard. And that's how the town works, kind of. But in a play about identity and the self and all that, it was really fun to have this character who, in some ways, has discovered himself, and he is men, women, children, old ladies, and all sorts of people.
I do like how, as the play evolves too, he kind of like the town evolves, you know. There's a moment, I think it's like when Peter returns, and there's some funny line about like, you know, people have moved away, I've become much quieter.
Yeah.
You know, he's like less talkative, or she, I guess you could have a female town.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Big question again, what parallels can you make with what is happening socially? Like, I guess, like, how is the kind of social circumstances of Ibsen's world and the play in the 19th century, like, are there parallels with the 21st century and kind of what we're facing now?
I think there must be, and it's probably not even a lot of nuance. I just think, you know, I won't say it's a problem. It's an interesting thing about human beings that we develop a sense of the world where we are at the center of it, kind of, because that just is how you get that light is hitting my eye, and so you get a little bit, it's not quite tricked or fooled, but you just get a little bit more convinced of your own reality. I think. I don't know if that seems about right to you, that, or people, and you can draw the wrong conclusions from that. And rather than just think, I'm just a person who is sensing and perceiving these things, but that person right there is sensing them and perceiving them differently, and may need a huge amount of help right now. You know, maybe that's what I should be perceiving, other than that light bulb over there, something like that. Yeah,
it is interesting because we published, oh man, it's been a few years since we published this, and definitely since a few, like, it was premiered in 2014. And so I do think, like, I don't want to open the whole Gnit in the time of like Trump question, but it is something interesting to look at the play now. I think when people are kind of, you know, in the age of social media, or kind of when people seem to be maybe looking at themselves a lot more, like literally looking at themselves for selfies and all of that.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I wonder what Peter's Instagram account was like. Weird way. Yeah. Here's one more. Okay. What, if anything, did you learn about the nature and craft of playwriting by adapting Ibsen's play? Are there other classic plays you are interested in adapting?
I'm sure I learned a lot. I know I learned a lot, and it was great with this particular play, which has, in some ways, it in some ways breaks the laws of physics. It was nice to realize how helpful basic gravity and the way light works and the way gravity works and all that stuff is can be very, it is very helpful as a playwright to because if you you could set a play anywhere. You could set a play inside of a screen or something like that, but then you just have to figure out, well, how do I physically do that? And that's an interesting process, kind of. So I definitely, just in terms of really nuts and bolts and design stuff, I know a lot more about that stuff than I did long ago when I started this thing. There's not that I have done an adaptation of The Verge, actually, with Leah Nanako Winkler, and I did this version together of Susan Glaspell's play The Verge, which is it's 100 years old this year, in fact. And we're looking around for a place to put that. That's a really interesting, weird play in its own right, and a beautiful play. And I have done a Pirandello, a novel, a novella of Pirandello's that I'm also looking around to find a home for. I don't want to do tons more of it, I think. But it's interesting. And it's really interesting. I think there's some other job other than just kind of updating the references and putting sneakers on people, kind of, it's something more about sensing that the consciousness was slightly different, and that maybe there's something in our present consciousness that might enlighten this or cast some light on it in a different way. So I'm not looking for things that it's a very nice question, an interesting question. I did learn a lot of stuff about stuff.
And then just curious, this person also asked, are there plans to do it in Norway, or has it ever been done in Norway? Which I'm kind of curious about too, of the Norwegians.
I would really love that. And there is, I think it's either the Ibsen Festival or the Peer Gynt Festival every year that happens. And, I did one time, I did a reading, Bill Pullman always really liked this play, and he's a wonderful, wonderful guy. And he had done a lot of work with a Norwegian director, so who flew over, and we did a kind of couple-day workshop, which was an amazing experience. There's I got the sense he and I had very different sensibilities. But it was it was the most Norwegian experience I could have had.
Yeah, there's a great, we didn't talk too much about your author's forward, although maybe we can now, because I do always like to ask. We have a lot of, but you have a great section about the design and kind of the Scandinavian presentation of a lot of the dialogue. And so it's interesting. Like, I'd love to see a Norwegian theater company take this on. Yeah. But also kind of jumping off that question, we do always have, in this room, like a lot of actors, directors, people who are practitioners. If they are going to do their production of Gnit, what advice, and as the writer, do you have for them? Like, how would you, beyond your author's forward, is there a tip or some piece of advice you'd bestow?
There was a fun thing that I actually think Matt Mayer, I think he said something about working a year and a half ago on it. It's something like, I just sort of feel like we should just imagine that we are Norwegian farmers who've been handed this script and just told, okay, get out there and say all this stuff, and that they're just going to do the best they can. And so somehow the Norwegian farmer just don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do the best I can, and I'm filled with feelings, and I'm going to share those feelings. And I think even Oliver I think we have a thing called a farmer's run that we would do in the rehearsal process of. So I just would say, to take your question very seriously and sort of boringly, I would just, I think there are ways to do it where it's kind of kooky and crazy, but to me, it is kind of already that. And I think a really, really pretty kind of straight and serious approach can yield a lot of the sort of the craziness of things, and also the sadness and the wonder and all that sort of stuff.
Great. Lastly, I think this is going to be our last question, which is sad. Oh wait, we have two. Okay, I'll try to fit in two more, and hopefully I don't talk too fast. So this is another practical question. Has there been a production with expandable casting? Because I know some of the characters are double. If someone has a friend that teaches theater, is there, and can people cast those?
I wouldn't say no, because if it's a school thing and you just want to get people involved, but to me, it's very much, I wouldn't be averse to it, but it's not just an economic concern. It is kind of for the purposes of advancing the meaning and feeling of the play, kind of. I think Andre Belgrader did it out at USC with students, and I'm not sure if it was if it was a bunch of students. That could work really, really well, and why shouldn't it? So yeah.
Has there been a female Peter?
There has not. There actually have not been so many productions of the thing.
Okay.
But I think that would work. I remember Oliver and I we thought Tilda Swinton would have been such a great Tom Paine. So she would be also great.
I'd watch that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think anyone would probably. She's amazing. Great. Okay, so this is going to be our last question, and then we'll do our final question. But when the town puffs his cheeks and blows up 4 times, seems maybe to stop Peter's mental narrative, but it also sorts of stuns the audience out of expectations. It seems there are these jarring, surreal, or abstract moments of the play followed by something moving. So do you have any thoughts on that? Or
yeah, can you say the thing right after it stops Peter's narrative and what?
So when he blows his cheeks and puffs out, it seems maybe meant to stop Peter's mental narrative, but it also seems to sort of stun the audience out of expectation. Are these, it seems there are these jarring, surreal, or abstract moments in your plays and followed by something moving.
Oh,
not something you're conscious of, or?
I don't know. It's a wonderful question. And I don't know if the moving thing is the guy going, the town says to Peter as they're walking through the woods, you ever go like this? I do. I mean, obviously. And that's it. And that all that was just, I think that character was about to do that sort of tired and boy, what am I, I just picture someone sitting at an office at a desk and you kind of go, but so he shares that with Peter and then asks if Peter does that. And I'm just glad that is a memorable part or an interesting part. And it is certainly meant to be someone inserting their little bit of the narrative into the play.
Yeah, it's funny because that moment stuck with me too. Just because you do see people do that all the time, and then it's funny because there are these big moments of connection, obviously in the play, like the loss of a parent or the kind of journey to self, but then also these very small moments of connection, like just blowing air out of your cheeks. And but yeah, so everyone, we will wrap up, but everyone who is in New York, I'll say it again, please go see the Tofana production if you can. And if you can't, mount your own, find a theater. Maybe you could do a specific one at a farm. It sounds like that might be kind of an exciting approach.
Right.
But thanks. Will, is there anything else you want to leave us with? We should watch out for your documentary. It sounds like we should also, like any projects coming up in the future, we should check out or.
Let's see. I don't know. No documentary, but Fred Wiseman, who's I don't know how that'll all work out. He's 90. He's about to be 92, and he's the most wonderful guy. I did a workshop with Juste Lejeune, I think is the title.
I think my French was horrible.
But I was over there when Notre Dame caught on fire. I was working down the street with Fred when that happened, and that was a very moving time to be in Paris. But it would be a French stage production that Fred wants to direct for the stage. He really likes theater and he really loves that play. I don't know. I really hope people can see this, and it actually does not run very long. It's just only about 3 weeks over at Tofana. So I hope that people can go see it because I think it's worth the 2 hours and 6 minutes.
Oh yeah. Okay. Great. So we'll get over there. Everyone in the chat, I can see like people commenting, but please thank Will, and I thank you too, Will, just personally, because you're always it's completely wonderful to talk to you, frankly.
Same here. I love those glasses too.
Thanks. They keep flipping off, so I was trying to kind of, I'm sorry if I was moving my head. And also it does, I was just saying, this is the first book club that it actually got dark outside, so I feel a little bit like I've been locked in the library. To look that way. But we really appreciate this. And then just a reminder for everyone, please join the mailing list, please go to the play. buy the book, buy 2 copies of the book, because I think it sounds like there are some revisions coming, which a few line updates. So buy it again in 6 months, because maybe there's a new edition. We'll talk about that on the side, Will. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, and then just housekeeping again, we're going to take a few months and let everyone spend the holidays with their families, and we'll be back in the new year. There'll also be some exciting announcements then. So thank you all for joining us. Have a great Monday night. Yeah, thanks everybody.
Yes.
Yes.
Happy Monday. Okay, see ya.